So Anthony, I think you mentioned that you had traveled to the Bahamas that week in November when Sam was in trouble. This was after CZ had tweeted that he was selling hundreds of millions worth of his FTT token. Tell us about your trip to the Bahamas, what you said to Sam, and kind of the atmosphere of the war room there.
Well, I want to provide a little bit of context. So I've had some time to talk with CZ about the situation and others. I think ultimately some people are of the belief that CZ put Sam out of business. That is not the case. And so I just want to state that explicitly. And I don't even think it was CZ's intent to do that. But I think what happened was he was hearing rumblings from Sam, where Sam, and it's sort of weirdly, the trip that we took to the Middle East sort of catalyzed all of this. So Sam was saying some things in some meetings. I wasn't in those meetings, but it got back to me, and obviously it got back to CZ. He was saying some meetings in Dubai that were derogatory of CZ, and so I think when that information came out, CZ said, okay, he was one of the founders of this. I helped Sam get the business started. He made it very upfront on Twitter that, that there was obviously a problem, and so he started to put his tokens up for sale. But if Sam was running the business appropriately and he wasn't participating in the nefarious ways that he was in the business would have been fine. And so I think it's important. Some people have got on a stage like this and said, well, CZ put Sam out of business. No, Sam put Sam out of business by the way he ran that business. And so what happened to me is I was actually speaking in Sarasota, Florida. There was rumblings that day. I think it was November the 6th or something like that, or 7th. The Monday was the 7th. And then I got back to New York and I spoke to Sam's dad about the problem, and it was intimated to me that it was an asset liability mismatch, that they were meeting redemptions and there were assets available, but they weren't necessarily liquid, and they needed time to get the liquidity, and they were looking for some rescue financing. And so at that time, I was a good citizen and a partner in the business, effectively. They owned a piece of my business. I was certainly trying to help them on their fundraising round. And then I talked to his dad later in the day.
How much money were they
well, they were talking about, and I've said this before, they were talking about $1 billion.
Okay.
Which seemed, a lot of money, but certainly would be manageable in the context of the size of the business. But later in the evening, that number went from $1 billion to $4.5 billion. And then I said, okay, there's obviously a problem, and it's a bigger problem than they want to admit to. And so I made the decision that evening. I got on my phone, I booked myself a JetBlue flight down to the Bahamas, and I wanted to see for myself what was going on. Listen, I put my name and reputation at stake. I introduced Sam to a lot of people. Brett and I, one short year ago, and I believe you were there with us, we had Crypto Bahamas at the Bahamar Hotel. Brett and I organized a dinner for the likes of Tony Blair and Bill Clinton and a whole host of luminaries one short year ago. You fast forward, it's sort of still hard to believe that we're where we are right now. And so I needed to see it for myself. And so I went down there, and I would say that the war room was despondent. And I would say that it was clear to a few people that there was a very small group of people that had done some things that they didn't let the other group of people into. And I've said this publicly, and I want you to think about this with your own businesses and your own investing. The way crimes get committed is they get committed by very small groups of people. It's very hard to commit a crime like this with a large group of people because what you learn about psychology and sociology, there's always a person of conscience that comes out and says, hey, I don't want to do this. So if you look at the Madoff situation, 3 or 4 people in a closed loop. I think as this story unfolds, if it eventually gets to trial, you'll see that it was 3 or 4 people in a closed loop that perpetrated the crime. And obviously, it's in the paper, and it's Department of Justice's analysis. 3 of those 4 people have already pled guilty. So, guys, when the window's open and you hear clippity-clop outside, it's a horse, it's not a zebra. Okay, if you got 3 of the 4 people have already pled guilty, it'll be very interesting to see how Sam makes a decision on his own plea. I mean, he's saying he's innocent for now. We'll have to see if it gets to trial. I can tell you the department...
Were those three people in the war room when you visited?
They were not in the... Okay. No, they were not in the war room. But, Sam was there. He looked disassociated. He was apologizing to me for what happened. He was claiming that it was mislabeling. Remember, this is now Tuesday the 8th, and there was some discussion in the early morning about CZ buying the business. But I think once CZ got a look at the business, that non-binding letter that they signed, he realized that it was not possible to really buy that business.